Hello YouTube, new episode of The Educated Barbarian today with this dear book, the Hagakure. When people are flummoxed by something that has happened in the wood, not knowing what to do, they will reflexively talk about nothing else. Talking is pointless at such a time. So in times of catastrophe, in times of drama, it is usually the talk of the town, and people focus on that immediately because they focus on the problem, and that's what we all do when we have an issue in our life. A lot of people are going to rant about it, not going to complain about it. That's natural, that's not an issue. It starts becoming an issue when it's the only thing you do. If you only talk about the thing, then there is no point in talking about the thing because you're not being proactive, you're not actually working. And in a sense, talking about the thing is helping you soothe your spirit, and it's making you comfortable in not acting upon it. And that's dangerous. That's something you want to avoid. You don't want to let yourself cope with words when you should be doing something. And when it comes to things that you don't have an impact on, that you cannot influence, there is actually no point in talking about it. It just makes it worse. And we actually have a great situation on our hands right now with the current pandemic, because that's what it is. People are psychotic about this. They are extremely afraid. They talk about it all the time. They imagine some scenarios of the end of the world. What is that doing for anyone? It's not doing anything. The only thing it's doing, it's actually making the fear worse. It's spreading fear. It's feeding it continuously. And that is something that needs to be avoided. It is inordinately amiss to gossip about the affairs of other men. It is not always appropriate to speak well of them either. It is best just to be cognizant of one's own capabilities. Apply yourself in training and be this one is tough. Circumspect in speech. So gossip, there's that famous quote of, there's gradations of people, and people who are of low intellect are going to talk about people who are of medium intellect are going to talk about events, and people who are of superior intellect will talk about concepts and ideas. Whether you agree with that or not, it is true that usually the type of people who gossip and who share misinformation, or who just rejoice in the distress and misfortune of someone else, tend to not be good people, and they tend to not be super intelligent. That's the reason why gossip is usually perceived as something negative. It's also perceived as a feminine quality in a sense, whether you agree with that or not. It seems here that shoujo agrees with the fact that men shouldn't engage in such affairs. And he also says that both for negative and positive things, meaning that spending any amount of time and energy spreading the praise or spreading negative information about someone is useless in both cases because you're focusing on someone else. That time would be better spent focusing on yourself. And that's what he says here. It is best just to be cognizant of one's own capabilities and apply yourself in training. A lot of people would be much better off if they did that. Instead of focusing about what X thinks, what Y did, just focus on what you're doing. Focus on what you're doing right now and what you need to be doing in the future. That is more beneficial to you. A man of noble character has a calm mind and does not rush things. A lesser man is not peaceable and incessantly clashes and quarrels with everybody. So it's the small dogs, the small dogs barks the loudest. And agitation in it, by and of itself is an indication that there is inner turmoil. And if you're calm and you're secure about yourself and you're confident, you will not need to have that type of demeanor because you will have that calm energy that Shoujo describes. Because you don't have to prove anything to anyone. As men, biologically, we dominate spaces, meaning that men and women actually, when we enter in a space, we have a presence, people see us entering, and then it's a game of how we occupy the space. Okay, so if you go sit in a corner and you face the wall, what type of behavior is that? It's an avoidant behavior, okay? If you start moving around and you start talking loudly so that people look at you and you try to get their attention, that's the behavior that he's talking about here. It's being agitated. And it can be agitated because you want attention, it can be agitated because you're nervous, etc. What does that type of behavior conveys? It conveys that you're not secure. It conveys that you need other people to recognize you because you don't recognize yourself. But if you can just exist in the space and be happy and content with just being there and just being and existing, that is a sign of a high level of self-confidence. It is discerning to behold the world as if it were a dream. You want to quickly wake up if you have a nightmare, and are relieved that it was only a dream. This world in which we exist now is no different. So this is quite deep. Because it could be interpreted as there is no importance in life because life is just a dream, so just do whatever you want. But I don't think that's what he means here. When you're in a dream, you do whatever you want, but you most of the time are extremely confident in your activities because you know that if obstacles arise, they're in a dream. And the belief that you have, your self-belief that you will be able to surpass those obstacles in your dream is most likely much greater than it is in real life. And the consequences of your action in the dream are also going to push you towards having a more dominant behavior. And that's what Shoujo is saying here. He's saying that when you can exist in that world without the fear of death, without the fear of what other people think of you, you exist in a dream state. And that is a lifestyle that can be applied to our world. It's tough, but it's applicable. And there's also a second lecture you could make here that basically entails the fact that Shoujo talks about this world as if it was a simulation, meaning that it doesn't truly matter. And that's nihilism, actually. And nihilism is spread across a lot of ideologies. Thing is, it was co-opted by postmodernism very recently in recent years. And now, if someone is a nihilist, you know that they're just going to be a wimpy, whiny person that just says, life doesn't have any meaning. That's not what nihilism is. That nihilism takes away the gravity of life to give its meaning back to what it means to be human. It's an important distinction, but I will eventually make a series in the Educated Barbarian about Nietzsche. A clever man will manipulate the truth, combining elements of genuine and insincere wisdom, and attaches reason to assert his point. This amounts to poisonous wisdom. Nothing lacking sincerity has worth. Okay, super interesting here. So, intelligent and stupid people lie alike. Everyone lies, everyone manipulates to an extent. But someone who has a lot of intelligence, who knows how to craft sentences, who has charisma, is much more dangerous. Because people who are stupid, they lie, and you can immediately tell that they are lying. And the reason why is, for the most part, these people who are bad liars don't have an ability to project themselves in the future. They lack the ability to understand the consequences of their action and the communication in between their lies. So they'll say a lie, and 2 days later they'll say a different thing that contradicts the first lie, which also proves that this was a lie. It goes on and on, but they don't have the ability to understand their own thoughts. That being said, someone who is intelligent does. And when someone is intelligent is malevolent, they're much more dangerous. Why? Because they have a much higher potential to manipulate people. And the issue too is that anyone who is not as competent as them, even if they're more intelligent or as intelligent, but they're just not versed in the art of manipulation and rhetoric and sophism, they'll just get sucked right in. They won't be able to see it coming. And so what Shoujo says here is that they tend to combine genuine and insincere wisdom. And that's poisonous wisdom. I personally call that circular debating and circular arguments. It's when you talk to someone who you are trying to build something with, and at some point you realize that the discussion gets sabotaged. And the more it goes on, the more you realize that they're the ones who are sabotaging the discussion because they have felt that they will not be able to get what they want, and so they poison the well. Talking to these people is a waste of time. It's called being intellectually dishonest. To be intellectually dishonest, you need to be intellectually capable. But this intellect is used as a strategy to get something or as a strategy to never be wrong. There's a book in my language called L'art de ne jamais avoir, l'art d'avoir toujours raison. The art of always being right. I will eventually review that book too because it's enlightening. If you've ever spoken to someone and you were like, they're smart, and yet it feels like if we stopped the discussion and we started it again the next day, they would pretend that they forgot everything we just said. These are dishonest people. And as Shuro says, anything that lacks sincerity has zero worth. And I agree with that. It's all about integrity and being sincere. I would take someone who's stupid but sincere over someone who's intelligent but insincere. There is such a thing as an honorable defeat by losing quickly in litigation or an argument. Okay? So in terms of losing face, it's much better to lose face immediately. And that is actually, it's a small thing if you think about it. If you engage in battle with someone and they knock you out immediately, some people would find that humiliating because, wow, you lost in 5 seconds. But in reality, wouldn't it be much worse if you fought that person for 25 minutes, got gravely injured, engaged your honor and staked your worth as a man on that fight and then lost? You lost much more. Discrimination, harboring animosity, and causing others to feel estranged is born of a lack of compassion. Conflict won't rear its ugly head if everything is involved in compassion. This is why I really like this book. It's not just a book about some guy who had a sword and who was alpha and who tells you need to do this and you need to be mean to people. No. Being a samurai was actually not that. It was never that. And I would argue that it still is not that. If someone tells you that they're an alpha male, but they're mean to people, they're not an alpha male. Alpha males are the leaders of the pack. They need to be liked and respected by the pack. In Animal Kingdom, most of the time, the alpha gains the position through force and maintains it through compassion. They help others, they protect others, they feed them. If you look at monkeys and and chimps, for example, apes, the alpha male tends to be the guy who tries to keep the peace. He's trying to keep everything afloat. And that's the same for us. And you see that strong men tend to be kind. Strong women tend to be kind. People who are secure, who know their worth, who understand their place in this universe, have no reason to be mean to others. Because what is the point? It's just negative energy. It's a waste of time. Making someone feel worse has no worth. There is no net gain. But that's if you're strong and kind. If you're not, there is a net worth. You made someone feel worse about themselves, and now you can feel better about yourself because they feel worse than you do about yourself. Hatred and all of that, discrimination, what he describes, it comes from hate within. Those people hate themselves, and it's also something that I would like you to keep in mind. In your life, when people are being mean, when people are being aggressive for no reason, think about one thing. They are discharging that negative energy on you for maybe 10 minutes, but they live with it 24/7. These people are suffering a lot, okay? So I know it's tough to extend compassion when someone is being a jerk to you, but it's important because it will make you a better person as well. It's not just for them. And a world where there's no insecurity, a world where everyone is happy with their body and their mind, would be a world with no conflict. That being said, it's an utopia, sadly. A man with shallow knowledge will act as if he knows it all. This is puerile. A learned man is modest and will never boast in this way. So this is actually the Dunning-Kruger effect, but back in feudal Japan. So for the people who don't know what that effect is, there's a study that proved that the less people know about something, the more confident they are about their ability to be an expert on the topic, and then the more they learn, the less they think they know. And then it leads to another effect that is called the imposter effect. But that's a different discussion. And that is verifiable across the board. I see that all the time, and it always cracks me up because it reveals a lack of self-awareness. If you don't know anything about a topic, this is an opportunity to learn and to listen to someone who knows. And you will see this type all the time. And the funniest thing about these people is that when you press them and when you show to them that their knowledge lacks depth, they usually turn out to be quite aggressive and mean about it, or they become dismissive, and they transform the discussion into a showcase of poisonous wisdom, as Shoujo said. And usually the people who know the most are the people who are the most modest about it. Because once you know, or once you accomplish something, what is the point in telling people about it? They will know, right? If you're good about something, you don't have to tell people, people will tell you. Shoujo, when speaking to his adopted son, said, "Young men today are inclined to be effeminate. It is an age in which warriors who are approachable, sociable, non-confrontational, and gentle are glorified as being virtuous men. This proclivity means samurai are limited in their potential and are unassertive. Above all men and as men are absorbed with protecting their station and stipend, I think they are just wasting away." So, controversial topic. It's personally something I've noticed. It's something that a lot of people talk about. It's the feminization of men in Western society. And there's a lot of things to say about the topic. First off, one could ask, why is it so bad? Why is it bad that men are being feminized? You will hear people say that men are becoming women and women are becoming men. And if you buy into the idea that men and women are not different and that it's just some cultural standard that separates us, then you will think that nothing is wrong with that. The thing is, I don't think that's true. I think biology plays a big role in our differences, and our differences help us complement each other. We exist as a whole, right? It's the yin and the yang. Thing is, if one of the two value is moving towards the other, then we have an issue, right? In a sense, if you believe in the women are becoming like men and men like women, then there would be no issue because the genders would just cross. Of course, there would be a lot of turmoil and problems as they cross because it won't just happen in a day. So at some point they'll meet here, and what happens then? I don't think that's true. I think that society in general is being more feminized. Women are more feminized and men are more feminized. So they're moving towards one side. It's not that they're crossing, they're both moving towards the side. And if you want an analogy of this, look at the political spectrum. I'm not going to say to which side it's moving, but the political spectrum is moving to one side and one side only, and the entirety of the group is moving to that side. So what Shoujo says here, when he talks about the qualities that being feminized represent, is non-confrontational, very sociable, approachable, and gentle. Which I think you would agree that those tend to be traits that exist very strongly in women. And if you look at studies, most people who are antisocial, most people who are very confrontational, who are low in agreeableness are men, and the people who are very high in agreeableness are women. And you can explain that with culture, but for the most part, a lot of it is biological. It's the way we're wired. It's our hormones, it's our brain, etc., etc. So why would it be so bad for a man, for a young warrior, to be approachable, sociable, non-confrontational, and gentle? Well, it means that these people are going to be no good when it comes to violence because they're going to be avoiding it at all costs. Look at the propensity for violence between men and women. Men are much more violent than women. They enjoy violence much more than women. It's a bad thing a lot of the time because the prisons are filled with men. The thing is, a negative value is not always just negative. Violence is also protection. Violence is indiscriminate. Violence is neutral. If a grandma gets attacked on the street and you're a man and you save her, you were violent, but it was positive, you saved someone. So that's the dichotomy of violence that lots of people don't get. Yes, men are violent. No, it's not a bad thing. It's the way violence is applied. The men who are committing crimes are men who don't control themselves. They are an anomaly. It's an infection of masculinity. It's masculinity that has become evil. Because masculinity by itself is also a neutral value. It can be good or it can be evil. The issue is that if the men that had the potential to be good men become feminized and renounce their swordsmanship or their status as a warrior, then who is going to exist to stop the bad men? That's also an issue that a lot of countries are facing nowadays. And the issue too is that they're being praised, and that's across the board something I've seen too. Men who are pacified are being patted on the head like good little dogs, like, oh, you're doing a good job at not being a man. And the men who are a bit more aggressive, who are a bit more masculine, if you will, are being pointed out as being a problem. And that's why people say masculinity is under attack. It is, in a sense, traditional masculinity is under attack, but only when it exists in certain types of men. You will see that masculinity is being nurtured in other type of individuals. There's an agenda behind it, of course, but I'm not going to talk too much about that. And as he says, this limits the samurai because it limits your potential as a warrior to grow. If you're not aggressive, if you're not going to go after it, how are you going to train? You're not going to train. They're unassertive. Being unassertive is bad. Why? It feeds passive aggressiveness. That's the thing too. The absence of violence doesn't mean that violence is gone. It means that it morphs. So physical violence is gone, but mental and psychological violence is on the rise because we're all violent. Men and women are violent. They're just violent in a different way. And again, these men end up in a sort of self-preservation mindset where they just try to protect their stipend and their status, and they're wasting away because they forgot what it is to be a man. Again, a statement that could be misconstrued as being sexist, but it's something I've noticed. Men tend to be risk takers, and women tend to be stabilizers. And when a man and a woman meet, if you experience that in your life, I hope you do, you will notice that the guy is going to try and do things, and the woman is going to try and prevent him from doing things. And it's a weird situation because on one hand, the woman is going to protect the man from hurting him, but she will also let him take certain risks because they can represent opportunities for the couple. And if the man is not proactive enough, the woman will leave, or she will pester, quote unquote, the man so that he is more proactive. Women tend to like guys who are more ambitious, and that's, again, perfectly normal. But that's the issue with those men too, is that they end up just trying to protect what they already have, which is the role of the woman most of the time, and then they end up just stagnating. And the issue is that if you keep pushing in life, then you are just going to die. Understand also that I use the terms men and women because if you're born a man, you'll have a higher chance of having that type of personality trait. I could also just say masculine and feminine. I know masculine men who are feminine in nature and who are pretty much born like this, and some women who are masculine in nature, but these are rare, there are exceptions. What Shoujo talks about here is the disintegration of what being a man means and the degeneration of men, basically. Men who were not supposed to end up like this, but who did through their environment. And you can notice that across the world as well. It's the same thing we're dealing with today. People's nature are being perverted, in a sense, being that they are not growing up to be what they should have been. So I'm going to leave you with that. That was quite loaded. If you have anything to say about that, let me know because it's an interesting topic. And we will continue next week. Thank you for watching.